Hi, third graders. I want to get you started on your assignment for today. It's covering the break apart property, or we could also call it the distributive property. So you are going to be on page 142 and 143 in your math book. So make sure you have your hardback book today. And we're going to take a look at the problem. It's asking you how can you break up a multiplication fact? So remember through the lesson, you can either break up the rows, which means that you would take the number of rows apart, or you can break up columns. So in this particular case, I could take four rows of 4 and 3 rows of 4, or I could do 5 rows of 4, which would be fairly easy, which would be 20, because 5 times 4 is 20, and then another 2 rows of 4, which would be 8. So different ways to look at breaking apart larger factors into 2 smaller addends. And that's basically what we're doing, is when we take this 7, we're breaking it up as a 5 and a 2. And if we break it up as 5 and 2, we're taking that 7 apart as an addend of 5 and an addend of 2. So we multiply those 2 addends by the number of chairs that are in each row. So let's take a look at the assignment for today. So the first part of our assignment says copy the array. So you're going to copy onto your paper the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rows of 3. Now this one's fairly simple. You probably could do it with your counting by multiples, but they just want to give you a basic understanding to start with on how to break it apart and make it easier to use. So you have 5 rows with 3 in each row. Now, if we break up the 5, we could break it up as 3 rows and 2 rows, which means you still have 3 in each row. So you're starting with 5 times 3. So that 5 times 3, we're breaking up the 5 as 3 rows and 2 rows. And when we break that up into 3 rows and 2 rows, we're still going to multiply. If you look here, there are 3 rows of 3, and here you look at the smaller array and you have 2 rows of 3. So we're just breaking these up into smaller pieces so that we can solve for the larger factors. So when I take those 2 and put them together, 3 times 3 is 9, 2 times 3 is 6, and when you combine them all together, you have 15. So our product for the multiplication fact is going to be 15. Now, if you look at number 2, same thing. We're going to copy this down, but you'll notice that they've already provided us with a space. So we count the rows, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We have 8 rows with 4 in each row. So how are these taken apart? Well, if you look at the top array, you have 3 rows with 4 in each row. And if you look, they already gave you the bottom portion of the 8 times 4. And the bottom portion of 8 times 4 is 5 rows with 4 in each row. So when I go to copy this onto my paper for number 2, I'm going to have 3 rows of 4, and I'm going to also have 5 rows of 4. And they're breaking it apart here. I like 5s because we all know how to count by 5s. And so that makes it much easier for us to take it apart and put it back together. So this 8 times 3 is actually being taken apart by 3 rows and 5 rows. And in each, sorry, not 3, excuse me, 4. So I have 3 rows of 4 on the top portion. I have 5 rows of 4 on the bottom portion. And when I have 3 times 4, if I were to count those, we shouldn't have to, but we could say 4, 8, 12. And we could go 4, 8, 12, 16, 20 for my 5 times 4. Now, I'm going to take all of these and I'm going to put them together, which means I'm putting a plus symbol there to show that I'm taking this smaller array group and adding it together with the larger arrays group and putting it to make even the much larger array, which is 8 times 4. So 12 plus 20 is going to give me 22. And when I take the 32, wow, Miss Honeymeal is not thinking about her stuff this morning. 32. And whenever I have the 32, that gives me all the objects for the 8 rows with 4 in each row. So I have 32 objects. Now, looking at number 3, it says, what is another way Maria could break up the array for 7 times 4, which is this one up here at the top. This is the one that we started with. And it's asking, instead of the 5 rows and the 2 rows, which would be what they're showing you here, how else could you break up the 7 times 4? So, one way to think about it is if you did, like I said, you could do 3 rows of 4 and 4 rows of 4. Or if you even wanted to do 6 rows of 4 and 1 more row of 4, that could also be a possibility as well. So you have a couple of different options that are different than this option that they're showing you here. So just thinking about how to break that apart a little differently is going to be your object for that particular, that's going to be what you want to do for this particular problem. Number 4 says Raphael broke up an array for 6 times 3 into 2 new arrays that both look the same. So when they say both look the same, they're talking about equal or doubled. Now remember, for your 6s, you can use your 3s to help you with your 6s. Now I'm just going to skip some space for number 3 here. And you're going to draw that array for number 3 right there. And I'm going to use this section of my paper for number 4. So 6 rows with 3 in each row. And if you know how to count by 3s, you could figure this out. However, again, this is just starting this basic, simple idea of breaking apart larger amounts or larger arrays into smaller arrays. So they look exactly the same. So when I look at 6 times 3 taken apart into 2 smaller arrays, I could say 3 times 3 and 3 times 3. And when I get the products of 3 times 3 and 3 times 3, which both of those are 9, so when I add those together, I have 18 as my total for 6 times 3. So the question asks, draw a picture of these 2 arrays, and then you could say Raphael could break it up as 3 times 3 and 3 times 3. Three rows of 3 and 3 rows of 3 to equal 18. So, number 5 is similar to that. It says, Anne broke up a large array into 2 smaller arrays. The 2 smaller arrays are 1 row of 8 and 4 rows of 8. You'll notice the number of objects in the rows stays consistent or the same. So we're taking a row of 8 and 4 rows of 8 and putting them together to make the larger array. So basically what you're doing is you're taking what you know about 1 row of 8 and 4 rows of 8 and putting them together in one larger array. So you're going to do that on your paper. So I'm going to start you off. Number 5, I have 1 row with 8 in that row. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And now this is my 1 row of 8. And now I'm going to also add to that array 4 rows of 8. And again, I'm just taking and I'm still putting 8 objects in each row. It's just now I'm going to make a larger array. So now I count my total rows, and I have, when I put these together, I have 5 rows of 8. And so when I take that 1 row of 8 and put it together with the 4 rows of 8, I'm going to have my 8 from my first row and my 32 from my second array, or 4 groups of 8, and I place those together and I would get 40 objects total. So we worked on 1 through 5 together. I'm going to let you finish up the assignment. Your assignment is going to be to complete 6 and 7. Make sure you go back to number 3. I want to see what some different things are that you come up with for number 3. Don't forget to go back to number 3. You're going to do 6 and 7. Be sure to draw the arrays and show how you are breaking apart. You can use a line or you can use a space, kind of like the way they did here in this particular drawing. You are also going to draw arrays for 8, 9, 10, and 11. So be sure to draw arrays to go with that. Notice that you have the 8 rows, but it's not showing you how many you have in each row. Well, when you take these apart, your number in each row is being shown in these 2 smaller arrays. So you have blank times 8, or blank rows times 8 in each row, and 4 rows with 8 in each row. So you have to use what you know about the 2 smaller arrays here to help you put together the larger array. Number 12 and 13 says Fred wants to separate the rows of the array below into 2 times 4 and 3 times 4. But it says, can he do this? So if you were to take 2 rows of 4, could you put, or do you have 3 rows of 4 to finish that array up? Number 14 again is explain how you can break a 9 times 6 array into 2 smaller arrays. Please be sure to draw yourself an array to do that. We've also been kind of doing some similar problems like this. How can you use 3 rows of 5 to help you find 6 rows of 5? So if you have 3 rows of 5 already, and I'm just going to lightly write in my book, if I have 3 rows of 5 already, then how could I create 6 rows of 5? So, and 16 and 17, you'll do on your own. This is a word problem, and this is, again, multiplication. It's asking you for 9 times the number of these marbles. So you're looking for 9 groups of 4. So think about what that would look like if you were to choose an equation. So have some fun with this assignment today. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to email me in Schoology. Have a great Monday, guys.